Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds!
Now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's and true. Come roll with the Yang Gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds!
Haha, Jon Munitz, leader of the Rosebuds, is in the nerd zone. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great this morning. Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've had the honor of being on your show, I think twice now. One time was with way back in the day when there was a big debate between, the Buttigieg supporters and the Yang supporters and the Bernie supporters. And so we had that fun debate, and then we did a little. I think you had something about We did talk about presidential leadership.
Yeah, we were talking about back when I was doing a series of getting everyone's top 3 priorities. Me plus 3. Yeah, and then we had the whole candidate supporter debates. I missed those. I might have to do a couple more of those in the future.
I thought those were fun.
Yeah, they were.
And it actually kind of gives you a lot of empathy for these candidates because, we can all kind of give our opinions, face to camera. But when you're live with other people challenging you, it is a different dynamic. And
oh, yeah. Although they have one advantage. They could go on any direction they want because they're the candidate. During those, we were like, okay, we got to argue for those people's positions. So it's like a little bit more constricting.
It's definitely a cool dynamic, though. So I hope you do more of them. And I know you've had a lot going on. So now you're doing the Full Bloom thing with Heidi as well. Mm-hmm. And I could have sworn that based on your Twitter kind of communications, that there was a Munitz campaign coming soon.
Maybe at some point, but yeah, right now. We've been trying to grow the Hill of Roses since we last talked to each other from just my channel into a network. And there are multiple shows on that network, including Full Bloom that I do with Heidi on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I record my own show Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, always at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then we have a couple of other shows in the works right now, like Drunk Politics, Popcorn Politics, coverage of different mediums to, reach out to those who enjoy watching people ramble while drunk on politics, the more casual fan, the people who want to get a little more pop culture incorporated into the political discussion. And then we'll have some roundtables on certain thought leaders that we're also going to be doing. So there's a lot to come. We already have articles up on the website. So if anyone wants to check out all the content that we do as a network, go to thehillofroses.com.
Love it. And so is this becoming like a full-time gig for you, or what's your plan?
I certainly put in hours that makes it feel like it's mainly coming away from the sleeping hours instead.
Yeah, I know that.
No, I wouldn't say it's a full-time thing. This has been a volunteer organization. We are looking to try and set up the process of becoming a 501c4 that we'll be looking to explore, operationalizing come December. So, yeah, right now we're a media organization, completely volunteer, and then we'll be a nonprofit come the winter.
Yeah. What's that process like setting up a C4?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. First of all, we are going through the process now of establishing a board of directors. So that's a big thing when it comes to, who's going to make the leadership decisions of this organization. We have, a vote this coming Sunday to make that determination. We have to decide on what our home state is going to be like. I'm going to guess we're going to go with New York, but we have to make that call as well. Then you have to go through the process of just incorporating as an organization. Then you have 3 forms you fill out. And then you have to, if you want to raise money in each different state, being that it's a political enterprise, you have to start doing registration in each individual state.
Oh, man. So from every state that you raise money, you have to register.
Technically, you don't, but people can call on you you did something bad. So if you make enemies, it's important that you've done the registration. Jeez. But you don't need to. So
yeah,
we're gonna do it just to be safe. But yeah, there's a lot of groups out there that just ignore that step and hope to not make enemies.
Yeah, crazy. And so what's the goal? Like, what's the end game? What do you want the Hill of Roses to look like 5 years from now?
Yeah, so I mean, our central thesis as an organization is to be trying to empower the people. And we see that in mainly two lights. One is how we interact with our public sphere, whether it be our government, our democracy. We have to make sure that we're empowered in those regards. So democracy reform is frankly the biggest pillar of what we're looking to organize on. The second is how we have some say within our economic sphere. And so we look towards universal basic income and universal basic services as the core tenets of economic empowerment. And then finally, we think it's important that we have the grassroots functioning well together. They are frankly often interacting in silos, all these different organizations. And we should be trying to create as much synergy as possible so people know how to get plugged in and you can have larger and larger events supporting these issues.
And do you guys see yourselves as a progressive movement, a Democrat movement, a Yang movement? Well, what is it?
Yeah, I would say it's a kind of a mixed partisan. We try to be collaborative in nature. So we have some people who like, those like political compasses, right? Like the 4-quadrant, left, right, authoritarian, libertarian. So we have people who stretch the whole spectrum here. We predominantly are more left leaning. Like there definitely is more consensus there, but we try to have a mixed partisan perspective overall as an organization.
Nice. And so tell me a little bit about your take on the state of the Yang Gang. It's one of my favorite topics because I kind of feel like some days it's disintegrating. Some days it's just like sort of petering out. And then some days it feels very strong and positive. And sometimes there are days where it feels like all three, depending on what hour you look at it.
Yeah, I frankly think it is in like a fledgling state. Like I think it's not identical, but it has a lot of the same remnants of like what Bernie Sanders movement had from 2016. And I think there's going to be a lot of like negativity during the process where it's like, we feel like there's this common sense answer in front of us all. We see these issues being of utmost importance, especially during this crisis too, that we're all facing now. And the political system has been like shooing us away for the most part. We're starting to get some people slipping in, which is going to frankly give more encouragement that this is worthwhile in the long term. We have to notch some victories on board, but yeah, there's going to be some pain points. There's not the central rallying candidate a lot of times. We were all kind of centrally honed in on Andrew Yang. Yeah. And you know what? There are candidates that he's endorsed, but those aren't always as aligned to each individual member of the Yang Gang. And frankly, I personally like the people that he's endorsed. I would say they're generally more of like that left-leaning side of the political spectrum. Like often over time has had a lot of overlap with like Bernie supporters, but like I think that's going to stray some of the more populist, independent, and conservative folks. And his endorsement of Joe Biden has certainly caused similar contention for some. So I would say we're a little divided right now. We're doing better than we should have expected, frankly. Like we are getting notches on the board. Macro conditions are helping us out. UBI has been never more front and center on Democratic platforms. I think we're in a good spot. I just think we need this year to wrap up for some unity to come back together, because this election, just having Joe Biden and Donald Trump, has not given anyone a found sense of optimism that significant change is going to happen. Even if they might be wrong, they might not be wrong, but we know Joe Biden, and he has not had the most revolutionary of tones when it comes to making change in DC.
So what are you going to do come November 3rd?
So I give one caveat. I think I'm not going to judge any single person out there. It's like at the end of the day, there's a lot of different strategies forward, but I'm going to just give my honest opinion. I'm going to probably vote for Joe Biden. I live in a blue state, which means that I traditionally don't have to. Like in 2016, I didn't end up voting for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. I voted for the Green Party with Jill Stein. But this election cycle, I see it a little bit differently, and that Trump is not an unknown entity now. He has a record. We know what he's going to do while in office. We've seen dangerous results in multiple spheres of, influence, whether it be foreign policy and destabilizing our relationships with foreign leaders, pulling us out of the Paris Climate Accords. It could be in our economy in terms of the tax cuts that he has put in forward, further restrictions on unionization. You could look at the environmental policy and rolling back some of the EPA things like the Clean Water and Air Act. You could look at further exacerbating like the immigration crisis. Yes, a lot of the cages were built under the Obama administration. Yes, there was separation of children who were held in cages, but he further exacerbated that by breaking up families and separating them when they arrived here at the border. So I see there's just a variety of things, and that's not even mentioning the recent like crackdown of sending federal troops in. Like I see a lot of things that make him kind of authoritarian in nature, some fascist tendencies with the idea of maybe potentially delaying this election as well, trying to crack down on people's ability to vote by using mail-in voting during a pandemic. I don't like the warning signs, and I'd much rather go to battle with Joe Biden in 2021 for the policies that I want to advocate for than him. And so I'd rather send a big message of an overwhelming popular vote victory rejecting Trumpism than try to send a signal that keeps getting ignored each time we vote third party. Like, I don't know if anyone has felt like the Green Party has become more respected because of 2016 and people voting for them.
Yeah.
It just didn't send the signal that was so desired, that we're frustrated with the system, change your ways. No, we got the same thing come 2020. So I think it's better to send the signal that we're rejecting Trumpism. Most Americans, wrongfully so potentially, see the Democrats as a left-leaning party. I see them as a centrist, center-right leaning party in the majority sense, like where the media is occupying. And so if most Americans see it as a left-leaning party, though, it's like, okay, we can either have America say, oh, we're not that far right. We are kind of moving left again. If you want any of these other ideas that are seen as progressive, I don't see how it helps either short-term or long-term to have, Donald Trump win again, or even have it be a close election.
Yeah, totally agree. I have heard some people suggest that if Trump is reelected, there's a chance that he will moderate himself, and that what we've been experiencing is Trump the campaigner. But once he doesn't have to campaign again, he can really focus on, his legacy and implement, his hard-earned CEO experience to just, execute well.
Yeah. At the same time, I have to ask, what restricts him from going further authoritarian? Like, I'm going to just make the bold claim that authoritarianism doesn't particularly play well for elections. So in my experience, usually that rallies people against you. And we're starting to see that when we have a lot of these conversions from Trump supporters to Biden. A lot of it is that he's just disrespecting the rule of law of our country, disrespecting the people who are normally venerated in this country. I see him being even more untethered. If he was to win again, nothing would restrict him. And frankly, who knows what he's going to try and set up for future generations when he gets more SCOTUS picks in the books, more federal judges through. The party will have confirmed that it wasn't just a fluke, that they need to continue following this ideology. I just don't see what stops him and moderates him if he wins. I think he'll go further into that authoritarian tendency.
Yeah, I mean, even if there's a chance he might moderate himself, that was the same argument people made during the first campaign, that once he was sworn in, the gravitas of the Oval Office and the presidency will make him presidential. And obviously that has not happened. And you just wonder, like, we're at a point now where whatever he says and does, like, it almost doesn't surprise us anymore. Like, there's nothing he can do to surprise us.
Desensitized for sure.
So, like, who knows how far he could go? It's nuts. What are your? I also should. I just realized I'm at 5% battery and my power cord is upstairs. Oh. So let me try and sprint up.
Let me become host. Let me talk with you.
Yeah. I'm gonna zoom in on you. You could talk to the nerds and tell them whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. Nerds, here is now, Jon for Yang right now. We have the nerd movement fully embraced here. I want to just thank all of you for embracing the nerdiness. It's one of my, frankly, most favorable parts of the Yang Gang is we embraced wholeheartedly the nerd. We love the statistics. We love the gaming culture, the online culture. Keep being that lovely nerds out there because, oh boy, we need some smart, innovative thinkers. But I will say, break the shell. Let's keep moving along and trying to put things in simpler terms for the people out there. Because frankly, a lot of people need this information spoon-fed. It's great to have the data backing it up for when you meet those smart, educated individuals, but let's start learning that, break it down into simple terms. We're educating the jocks here. We're their tutors right now. I was addressing, Tom, your nerds out there and appreciating their nerdiness and how to hone that nerdiness.
I love it. What do you think is the kind of nerd? The thing about nerds is I feel like we have a lot to offer, but we're often not the ones in positions that can influence government. Mm-hmm. And, obviously government is generally something that rewards, or politics is something that rewards personality and, charisma and media savviness. And though sometimes some nerds have that, but it's not common, right? But unfortunately, like Trump is a perfect example of someone who's a perfect, like modern day politician. He knows how to brand people, how to put people in boxes, how to like stir up emotion and like animus. Not really good with numbers, not really good with details or nuance.
Yeah, no, he's not.
What do you think? Like, are we just screwed? Like, because I kind of feel like the system is not set up to put smart problem solvers into office. Otherwise, like Andrew Yang would have gotten way more than like 2%.
Yeah, you know what? I do think that there is some natural deterrence to having these nerdy people in office. Mm-hmm. Most nerds tend to be a little bit more introverted. There's a reason why we have such eclectic interests and such deep knowledge. It's because we're not out there on the town all the time practicing those social skills. We're further deepening our knowledge into.
So Dungeons and Dragons does not count.
Yeah, so naturally you're going to need a little bit of an extroversion in personality to run for office more often. But that's the thing that I think is also important. Like going back to like this whole Trump versus Biden thing. Like you're not just voting for the president, you're voting for an administration. And you know what? I have more likelihood to expect Joe Biden to bring in some nerds than I do Donald Trump. They are certainly more like the billionaire class who has profited off these industries in most cases, or is like just not even qualified, like Ben Carson for HUD. Like there are certain things where it's like you're either getting just pure incompetence because they were a loyalist, or like someone who tried to profit off that industry. But nerds getting into politics, the problem is like they're thinking at this deeper level and they kind of make this assumption of what people already know. Mm-hmm. Like they're like, oh, that's intuitive. Of course that makes sense. And so they make some assumptions about like what the general populace might understand that they just don't. They really need things spoon-fed to them where it's like, A, you're saying it simply. B, you're repeating it over and over. You're not just making the assumption that they got it and moving on. You have to reiterate that constantly. And then furthermore, we tend to be more like logic-based thinkers, like A does B, B does C, so A can go to C. But, most people tend to just be visual learners. So they don't want to use math and statistics. They want to hear that story. And oftentimes, again, to have particularly interesting stories, you have to have a little bit of that extroverted personality to have had good lived experience to talk to these different issues. So I think that naturally is going to create some natural deterrence for nerds. On top of that, like the media is super important, and nerding out just doesn't generate the drama that they are so desiring. So it's a little bit those brash people who are willing to hurt some feelings, not these nerds that are getting the attention, which is there's a lot of reform to be done. But I hope some nerds there will like game theory against the media and try and like use them against themselves like Trump did. I don't think Trump did it purposely, but he has the right skills to like manipulate the media against itself.
Yeah, I was watching the Fauci hearings just yesterday or the day before, and there's this guy. Have you ever seen this guy, Jim Jordan?
Yeah,
he's
guy
like
never wears a jacket whenever he does his hearings.
He's like the anti-nerd. He's so like focused on just bullying people, and so like dismissive, and it's just like dripping with like disdain, his tone.
Yeah.
It's like, how are we going to solve problems if all we have is this like mud throwing back and forth? And it's just it's quite sad. I mean, but he's a sitting member of the US Congress and making policy for us. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Congress, what are your thoughts? You guys have had a lot of down ballot candidates on the Hill of Roses. Any come to mind that you're like, well, here are some that I feel are going places?
Yeah, sure. So first, to your point about Jim Jordan, before I hop into that, I find his name so appropriate. He reminds me of basically just like an angry gym coach. That's like his big spiel. He's constantly yelling. He'll never wear the jacket. He's just in his like collared shirt. But back to your point about like down ballot candidates. Yeah, we've interviewed a lot on the channel. We've interviewed 45 people in Congress so far. We also interview some other people like thought leaders and ex-candidates, but we really do like to focus on down ballot candidates because at the end of the day, that's where we're going to do legislation. That's who is going to have the say of what's coming forward to the president's desk. The president can try and guide them to do certain things, but he can't write it himself. He gets some executive orders, influence over the military, and then the veto pen. And right now, it's important that we get something good to Biden's desk because guess what? Bernie Sanders wouldn't have given you Medicare for all on his own. Andrew Yang couldn't have given you universal basic income. You need someone to write that bill. So we try to focus on those that can do that. And in asking, who are some of those best candidates that we've had come onto the network that are going to go places? Well, I have currently on the channel a playlist of all the active candidates. So we have, I think it's 23 active candidates still that we've interviewed. Of that 45, the other 22 have had their race come and gone, or they've dropped out of their race. So of those that I think are going to be particularly well suited are probably one. I really like David Kim's campaign. I think he can do well in California's 34th district. I like, I'd say Paula Jean Swearingen's campaign in the U.S. Senate for West Virginia. I think that would be a good one. I think it's also going to be pivotal that we look towards some of these people out in like Massachusetts. I like Ed Markey's race against Joe Kennedy. I like the fact that we have Alex Morse out in Massachusetts. I like that we have Robbie Goldstein out there. And then on top of that, there are certain ones that I really like the people. I have some suspicions about race quality, but like I really like the people, so I like to give them the support. Blair Walsingham is a great candidate. I love her. Tennessee's just been red since the 1800s, so I'm a little nervous there. And then on top of that, you have Jen Perelman, who's running in Florida against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Great seat to flip. I get nervous when we challenge the establishment, getting too much hopes up. So yeah, as you can see on the screen, this is the playlist that we have of candidates that are still active. I'm going to be talking to Leo Momera again soon as well. So yeah, I really like his campaign as well. Yeah.
If Jen Perelman can beat Wasserman Schultz, it would be, isn't that like defeating Darth Vader? Like she's part of like the power structure.
I don't know about Vader. That would be like Shahid Buttar beating Nancy Pelosi, or like had Charles Booker won, him beating McConnell. But this is like maybe beating Darth Maul or something like
there
that.
There you go. At least like a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although it's interesting that I was talking to Jen, she definitely felt it was cool that Humanity Forward endorsed her. because she did not feel traditional Yang Gang. I felt like she was more of a Bernie supporter.
Oh yeah,
and that's great. That I think Andrew's kind of casting a wide net. And
I also think the endorsement, frankly, like made her embrace universal basic income more. Because beforehand, like when I read her platform, she was open to like UBI pilots, UBI studies, and then like once she got the endorsement, she's like, okay, no, let's just do it. So it goes both ways. It's like, yeah, she didn't feel like traditional Yang Gang, and it's because she didn't support Yang during the primary. She supported Bernie. But you know what? When you show someone support and you're willing to back someone up, they're more willing to give some credence to your cause too. So it's like, you can't just support only the purist, there from the beginning people. Like, yes, support those people as well. But like, when you support these people who are on the fringes of or on the fence of flipping over, that's going to be where you end up creating more of an impact a lot of the time.
Yeah, you know, in some ways, all the work that we all did during Andrew's campaign, one of the indirect benefits is now that he has more clout, he's able to influence congressional candidates and kind of nudge them in favor of UBI because they know that he has a significant kind of like base of support behind him. So there's that's kind of a long game kind of perspective that maybe is, you know, we don't often think about, but you know, we've basically empowered Andrew to have a seat at the table in a way that UBI never would have, you know, a year ago.
And I think there's also credit to the Yang Gang themselves. Like, not all, but there's a lot that have kind of gotten really focused on these down ballot candidates and have helped make that connection for those candidates. Like, I know Heidi had told me that she had been the one encouraging Jen to ask for that Humanity Forward endorsement. And so it's going to be a two-way relationship. Like, Yang was super focused on his campaign. And so essentially, you know, he wasn't looking at all the races under the sun. So we have to kind of help make some of those races visible to him. It's like a two-way relationship. And so I know for certain, like, there are certain candidates like that. Russ Cirincione was one who I encouraged to apply for Andrew Yang's endorsement. And eventually he did get that endorsement as well. So we need to have everyone who's not even running for office start helping connect leaders with these people as well. Because I can tell you this, at the end of the day, the biggest thing they're fighting for is just name recognition. Because a lot of these people are just no-name people. Like, they might have some people know them in their local community. That's why they're running for office. For the most part, as a national platform, a lot of these people are first-time candidates. They were just inspired to run, whether it be from Bernie or from Yang, or even from like Warrens of the world, to be able to run for office. And they've taken their shots, and some of them need the encouragement to run again. Some of them are running good races right now, and they just need a little bit of extra support. So be on the lookout. That's why we try to highlight so many of these candidates so more people out there can be aware that they're running.
What's your sense of the Humanity Forward organization and efforts that Andrew is doing right now? Like, do you feel like this is the working out and it's successful, or what's your take?
I find that there are some parts that he's doing well. I think they've done a good part in this cash relief effort. They've really been leading on that front. I feel like there's a little bit of a discombobulated nature to like how they're pushing for candidates. I feel like there's not like a program to get involved with Humanity Forward to then support the candidates. It's like a one-way publishing relationship, and then you try and get involved in those campaigns' infrastructure. Like, I know they're trying to run a very lean organization. I think it's roughly like 6 to 7 people in total. And then they have Humanity First, which is connected to that, doing a lot of these mailers. So I think they need just a little bit more support infrastructure-wise of like connecting to the grassroots and like, how do you streamline the process for these candidates? Like, a lot of these infrastructure tools like phone banking are not particularly unique, but like when you have to do it over and over for each one of these candidates, it can be a big time spend. Like, on average, it takes roughly like 2 hours to get started doing phone banking. While if you were just saying, we here at Humanity Forward are building the infrastructure to support phone banking for these campaigns, just use this one method of doing phone banking. Like that's what the Sunrise Movement frequently does. They've already developed that infrastructure of supporting candidates by having a phone banking infrastructure, so that you're not calling on behalf of that candidate's campaign. You're calling on behalf of Humanity Forward, which has endorsed those candidates previously.
What's your take on his podcasts and the content sort of creation efforts?
I think it's generally pretty good. I obviously like listening to Andrew Yang in long form, and so I've appreciated that. And I've appreciated that at first they were doing it just audio. I like the video. I like that kind of semi-casual nature, but like you get to see some of the mannerisms and the humor that's clearly evident when you see video compared to audio. I think the guest makeup has been a nice wide variety of topics. I had encouraged him when we had him on our own program interviewing him that he try to fix up some of the demographic balance. Like there has just not been a ton of women that he's interviewed so far. He's starting to increase that. I think he had heard our feedback pretty well as the communities. I had even suggested during that Heidi be one of the people that he considers bringing on, so he can like have some understanding of the people that he's endorsed, like how they're looking for support. Like I would think a great step for us to be motivated to contribute to these campaigns is let us get to know them a little bit better. Let's interview them in long form. That way we're inspired to donate to them, or we know in detail what's the game plan for victory, so we can actually achieve a winning campaign. Because right now, like there are certain people that it's like, yeah, I've seen the endorsement, but I don't really know all that much about them. Like one that comes to mind, I see this name a lot, but I've never gotten to know them because they haven't had any long form content on any of these channels, is Marilyn Strickland. Like I've seen her a couple times in like Washington's 10th, but I've never gotten to know her because I haven't seen her on any media platform. So I'd love to get to know her better, but we haven't had the forum to do that. So I think he should interview more candidates. I think he should interview more women. And I think, frankly, he should interview Heidi, because that could be both of those things. Understand how to support the down ballot movement, as well as how you can, frankly, get involved and get to know them a little bit better. Let's support our independent media folks too.
Yeah, it must be hard trying to balance. I suppose he's trying to grow the audience so that he has more kind of support longer term and can kind of wield more influence, and at the same time provide real-time help to down ballot candidates, right now.
It's that classic trade-off of like, do you value your existing customers more or your new customers more? And I think you need both of those efforts. If you only see support for like the new people, but not the existing base, it gets, I don't know how to say it. It's just like you start losing all that investment money because they stop being as invested, or you don't realize as much if you had invested into them higher. So I think that's just take a step, interview each of the candidates he's endorsed once. Like, I think that would just be a fair thing. Hell, you could do it all in one day. Like do a town hall series like Marianne did with her Progressive Caucus Summit. Just do something like that where we all get to know each of these people in long form.
Yeah, certainly now that the primaries are generally done, I mean, anybody that's survived the primary and is going to be on the general seems like they should be a guest on the Yang Speaks thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I wholly agree there.
Yeah. Question from the audience.
Yeah.
Who would you like from Brent? Who would you like to see as Biden's VP, and who do you think he will pick? Okay, so let's cover the will pick side of the house first. So the short list that we're working with right now is Kamala Harris, Susan Rice, Karen Bass, flirting with Elizabeth Warren, and Tammy Duckworth as well. I personally believe of that list that he's going to end up like probably picking Susan Rice. Like I was thinking it was going to be Kamala Harris if it came out this weekend, but I think the little Politico spoiler like was testing the waters of that whole announcement. Like they were like, oh, how are they going to react if it was Kamala? Oh, and how are they reacting now that it's not Kamala? Oh, okay, let's go forward. Because like I don't particularly think that's a great idea picking Susan Rice, but I think that's going to be like the safe pick right now. I
I just feel like there's going to end up being a little bit too much of that Obama administration vibe. Like for some people, it's like, oh, they're both people of the Obama admin. Like, okay, we're really just returning back to that era. It's not like moving forward. It's going back to the past. If I was to pick who I'd like, it's people not on his short list. Of the short list, I would say probably Warren or Duckworth are who I have preference towards, but it's not strong preference. But if I could pick anyone, it'd be people like Barbara Lee would be very interesting to me. I'd love Katie Porter. I'd love Tulsi Gabbard. Marianne Williamson would all be interesting. Marianne Williamson wouldn't make as much sense since she's not a representative. But again, there are lots of people. Like Nina Turner could be interesting on that list. I just think that you need someone who is going to be a competent speaker. I think we need someone who's going to say, hey, there's hope to be had. It's not Biden. He's the transitionary figure. Here's who we're setting up as the next generation. Someone who is going to be willing to be sort of loyal. We don't want to have them outshine Biden, frankly, during his administration. You want them to kind of stick in the same team. And furthermore, they should be competent enough to do the job immediately. They shouldn't need all 4 years of training because who knows with Biden's age and health what we're going to get with him. So I would prefer one of those people, but I expect he'll probably pick like Susan Rice at the end of the day.
And how would you feel about that if he does pick Susan Rice?
I mean, not thrilled. Like, it's not like it would change my vote. Like, I still think I'm going to be voting for Biden. Just it sucks like that we're kind of forced into this trap again. Like one of the things that I am, hoping for, because Democrats have shown some history of doing this now, is they were fighting for the For the People Act. And it got held up in a Republican Congress, and specifically the Senate. So I wonder if we could pass that. Could we have some better results getting more democracy reform across? And from there, can we actually have third parties have some prominence finally so that they can compete? I just don't think there's any third party that's really showing like a tactical strategy to accomplish like taking over the two-party system right now. And so I'd be bummed, but it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah. Were you enthusiastic about the Unity 2020 dark horse?
I thought that was a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I don't know. I guess I can understand the enthusiasm for it because it seemed like, oh, we could have a third choice, but the timing just seemed like
like if you told me this whole Unity idea was for 2024, I would have thought that was interesting. And it's like you have enough time to get all the paperwork done, get ballot access across the board. You're not chancing it for this election cycle. But you're also getting to put this kind of idea into this election cycle regardless. I think it would have had actually a large beneficial impact had they just started from the beginning saying this is a 2024 idea.
Yeah, are they still going on? Like, I don't think I've seen any more details.
I think the people who started this idea were not people I was particularly fond of either. Like the Weinsteins of the world had been running with this, and I didn't find that their direction was particularly conducive to a smart strategy. So I hope it maybe fails and then gets picked up again in 2021. Because I think it was a distraction of people's time when it should have been focused on these down ballot candidates.
Yeah. Yeah. In some ways, the whole Unity 2020 thing is like the perfect content creators scheme to get a bunch of people fired up.
You've certainly noticed that the content creators have been some of the ones to latch onto that the most because they don't want to give up that hope that's like, oh, no, I'm not agreeing with Biden. I don't have to take everything he said. Let me just keep on holding hope for this idealistic world. I'd rather be a little bit more of a realist and say, okay, where can we have the most amount of impact? Where would we actually be united behind? Down ballot. Let's get those people elected. That way we have more support for future administrations, or we can just draft this policy. Presidents don't do nearly as much as people think. They're important, but they're not the end all be all.
Yeah, I think in a way, one of the things about Yang was he had experience as an operator, as a chief executive, as a business leader.
Yeah.
And you didn't see that from the Weinstein brothers. I think they're more like essay writers. You know, they can
professors
come up with provocative, kind of interesting ideas. But when it comes down to like
IDW world,
like running a project, having a timeline, tracking dependencies, following up on action items, like I don't think that was like the Unity 2020 thing.
No, it's clearly not. And I think also like some of the momentum clearly was stolen when Kanye West decided to run as well. Jesus. Like that became like the idea of an independent run automatically is like got spoiled. And we've seen this several times now. Like, you know, who was the first one? It was what's his name? The Libertarian. Why am I blanking on his name?
What was it?
Justin Amash. That's who I was
thinking.
Yeah, Amash was the first one to do this. He came into the race. Everyone tried to like run him off, like you're gonna cause Biden to lose. And they did this with Kanye. It's just like I think they need to get the message that you have to do this for longer, and during an election cycle that feels a little less existential to people. Like they just want to beat Donald Trump, get him out of the way, and in their mind, like return to regular bad Republican. Like that's why they can glorify like George W. Bush. They're like, oh, you know what? They at least speak in full sentence.
They speak English.
Yeah, like that, and they will act with some level of maturity. Like I don't get some of the points that they bring up of trying to rehabilitate that career, but they just want to get rid of Trump. There's definitely Trump derangement symptoms, and you have to be tactically smart. Go ahead. Unity 2024. Good idea. Hell, I might support it depending on the policies and who they pick. Like that's another thing. Like how could anyone want to rally to this Unity 2020 idea when it sounds like kind of like almost the embracing of bipartisan status quo, and there's no policies there and no specific people there. Like it's a nice cart, but we have no horse right now.
Yeah.
Like you kind of need the horse before you can ever start. Like, am I going to sign up for this adventure? I don't think so.
Yeah, I there were a lot of question marks around the whole thing, and what was interesting was I think there was a contingent of Yang Gang who were really fired up about it.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware. My co-host Heidi was one of those. We had Paget on the program as well that we talked about this idea, and Paget was pretty strongly on this unity front. We had a nice little debate about that on our channel, but. So yeah, I just think it's an absolute waste of time that could have been spent organizing down ballot.
What was the argument for it? Like I'm sure when you interviewed Paget and you had the discussion with Heidi, you must have raised issues like logistics.
Oh yeah, timing. Yeah, definitely logistical issues like the ballot, the whole like contingency plan that they had.
Well, the fail-safe, right?
The fail-safe, which frankly I never got because like. If you're saying there's a failsafe, what does being a spoiler really mean to you then? Like, if we're going to cause Trump to win, we're going to get out. Okay, so then why would Trump people potentially want to join you if you're just like breaking the plan if it's going to cause Trump to be more likely to win? Like, there's just not a lack of common sense behind this failsafe. Again, 2024 is where they need to be focused. And their whole reason is we keep being told cycle after cycle, like, suck it up. Deal with these candidates. They're not the people you like. You're not going to get this big, not radical, but like faster paced change that people feel like they need. And every cycle, there are ideas where it's like, okay, something's got to finally break this stranglehold. And people are flailing because it's like, it's a stranglehold and you're thinking without oxygen right now. I think if you're going to do these ideas, do them before a primary. Like you don't seem like a sore loser if this was the plan from the very beginning. It just comes as people feeling like, oh, you're just rejecting the democratic process. You're just trying to be a sore loser. I think you need to have this plan from the beginning, build up the infrastructure, do it in a sound tactical approach.
Yeah. You wonder like if the same amount of collective energy and enthusiasm had been channeled to David Kim or a Robbie or a Blair,
Yeah.
or a Heidi, what would have happened? Like, it's just, if you're gonna play it, if you're gonna like do a trick play, try and do it to get a first down. Don't do it to get like a touchdown when you're like on your own 10-yard line. It's just, and there's like no time on the clock.
Yeah, it's very true. Like, you have to be realistic with where we are right now too. Like, when you look at a lot of these like Yang specific type races, we've been like in the 6 to 12% range of the electorate. Like, we have a long way to go, and that means we have to be strategic with our resources. We don't have infinite resources. We are still in that scarcity-based society, so we have to start funneling them strategically where it needs to be put. And it's just not the Unity 2020 idea. Like,
yeah, I mean, it does.
Like, it doesn't have to be Congress. You could go local. You can go state. You just need that like actual baseline support that you need for a congressional or a presidential campaign. You need the people underneath you, because not just the economy works bottom up, government works that way too.
Yeah, it also, in fairness to the Unity 2020 people, I mean, I think it speaks to the desperation they felt.
Oh yeah,
with their choices, and I empathize with their frustration. But I also feel like, hey, if you look at American history, like civil rights movement, that shit doesn't happen in a year.
Yeah, no.
It certainly doesn't happen in like 120 days, which was the Unity 2020 time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you look at the historical nature of like party switches, like if you look at where the next projected one would be, it's actually around like 2030 when you look at the historical average. And usually it's because there's a generational change that happens as well. Like, it's usually not just a big event. Like, there's also a new generation seizing more power within the political arena. And we're starting to get to that point where technically there are more registered like millennials and Gen Z than baby boomers now. But we're still not at the point where we vote at a high enough clip for that to matter. So it's going to take some time, and look towards 2030 to see some major changes. And right now what we're doing is trying to build the infrastructure, build the win for the next generation. What are people going to focus on come that sea change of, either a new party or a new makeup of the parties?
Well, I have one last question before we wrap up, Jon. Yeah. This is from Anna, who's wondering, like, how can we get people motivated to either, lobby Congress? There's so much passion that everybody has. How do we channel it again? Because it seems quite splintered at the moment. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that this is going to require some actions from, frankly, like the top, the leadership that can call people towards unity again. I think one thing Humanity Forward needs to start embracing is specifically this problem. Don't just try and funnel people off to the individual campaigns. Build the infrastructure within Humanity Forward to set up a call basis to be able to phone bank for each of these areas and have access to a variety of lists to be able to do phone bank. So like apply to get the list of any race that you've decided to make an endorsement for. Then from that point, build up a gamification type system that creates like a leaderboard for you to make calls. So you only have to go through the onboarding process once of how to be a phone banker, and then you get different lists, and you can contribute to a collective leaderboard that comes with potentially swag or stickers or some type of small reward, as well as just the pride of seeing your name towards the top of the list. I think that's one of the biggest things we got to do is make it so people have to go through less onboarding to get involved with a campaign by only needing to get involved once with Humanity Forward. And then from there, gamify the system. Make it fun for you to want to accrue more and more phone banking sessions. I know one of the best things that they had done was add just a tracker to donations, because it inspired you to know how much progress you've made, what impact you're actually having on the campaign, and how it's going to be used. Likewise, that needs to now be applied to phone banking.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, the importance of the infrastructure for activism can't be said enough. I can't help but do a plug for a project that I've recently started called Of the People. and it's basically like a Kickstarter for Congress. And we've just assembled a team of 4 people from Microsoft, Google, Amazon, a bunch of other places.
Tom, you'll want to check out my most recent interview with these folks called Demo Draft. It's 2 people out of the University of Berkeley who are Yang Gang, who had created kind of a similar platform to what you're discussing. So maybe have a talk with them at some point.
Yeah, we actually did talk back in June. I shared our planning docs with them, but I think they decided to go their own way.
Yeah,
which is I think that's one of the things with these movements where you have a lot of independent efforts.
Yeah, and
it's a fair decision because I think a lot of us are kind of like entrepreneurs too. We want to run our own show. Because there's another one like The Good Party, which I talked to.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of us are kind of going at it with slightly different angles or different teams. This is probably one of those things where whoever figures it out, like we all win. So, my best wishes to Demo Draft and The Good Party. And of course, fingers crossed that the people can pull something together in the meantime as well. But with that, I just want to ask you one last question. Is there anything else that we should talk about or that you wanted to mention to the audience before we wrap up?
No, I think we're good. I mean, we're going to be having an upcoming event for the Democratic and Republican conventions, some special episodes featuring more of the Hill of Roses team. Normally it's just Heidi and I recording, and maybe we'll have an external guest, but we're trying to get more people involved in recording this, what will be a fun event. Beyond that, just come check out the Hill of Roses. We're on pretty much any platform you can think of. We congregate all of our materials at thehillofroses.com. You can come subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Hill of Roses, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Twitch, Periscope, etc. So,
wherever you are,
we have a good time focusing on the down ballot movement, and we're going to be hosting more debates upcoming soon. So we're making a little program change. Come August 10th, I'm going to start doing PowerPoint presentations every Monday on either current events or policy, and then on Fridays every other week I'm going to be hosting a debate. The first one is going to be myself against this individual named Daniel Burke, who's running for Congress, running for the U.S. Senate in New Jersey. And we're going to be debating universal basic income. So fun times ahead, and we hope to see you there.
I'll get the popcorn out. You guys go check out the Hill of Roses. It's a great YouTube channel as well as on all the other platforms. Subscribe and support Jon and Heidi and the rest of the Hill of Roses team. There's a whole group of them putting out great content. And Jon, I hope you'll come back on the show in the future.
Oh, most certainly. Tom, thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. And with that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.